and welcome to Switched On, our series exploring the worlds of business, technology and much more. I'm joined by technology entrepreneur Dr. Michael Snowden. Thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Today we are discussing the sometimes controversial topic of artificial intelligence. A recent study has suggested that AI may replace as many as half our jobs over the next decade. Michael, that sounds absolutely terrifying.
It certainly sounds terrifying, and I don't believe it. And the reason is the research is based on tasks that people perform in their jobs, and the task can be automated, but many of the other responsibilities that those jobs have cannot be automated. In 10 years, well, it seems like a short space of time and AI moves quickly, it is unlikely to have that such a dramatic impact on all jobs. There will be some jobs that certainly will be affected, but generally speaking, I think most people can be satisfied that it won't lead to massive unemployment, and certainly we will encourage people to continue to upskill themselves.
What jobs or industries do you think are most at risk?
I think we think about the tasks and then we think about the jobs that comprise a large number of those tasks. So if those jobs involve repetitive, dangerous, information gathering type activities, they're easily replaced by a machine.
One of the industries I wanted to ask you specifically about is agriculture,
right.
Which is so important to us here in New Zealand, obviously. Is an industry like that going to be affected?
Oh, absolutely. We've got an opportunity to really increase the productivity of our agriculture. And that means using a range of different technologies, ranging from sensors in the ground to understand, for example, what the chemical composition is, what the moisture level is, what the temperature is, and then adjust the farming inputs to get the greatest productivity out of them. This general idea is called precision agriculture. In other words, using technology to almost apply it to the per plant rather than per hectare or per animal.
So history would suggest that as well as displacing jobs, that a revolution like AI could potentially create them as well.
Absolutely. So if we look over the 3 or even arguably 4 industrial revolutions rather, that in every case there's been more employment. I mean, take a recent example of the PC revolution. So that had a fundamental change in information technology throughout business. And most typist jobs were eliminated with this change. But there are new jobs that were created that have created greater productivity. Another example would be the introduction of ATMs, the bank. So previously you had to line and have a long line to wait to get your cash. And when ATMs, it took a while for that adoption to actually happen before people trusted them. But now there are more bank tellers than there were before the introduction of ATMs.
So for people like that, it's really a chance to perhaps upskill and have even more job and career satisfaction.
Of course. And also it's important to recognise that these things don't happen overnight. Even though the pace at which this could change, we don't really know. But it's organisations have to make investments in artificial intelligence. They're only going to do that if there are good returns. So it's in no organisation, nothing flips over overnight. It's not a black and white situation. There's time for people to make that adjustment. But what we have to think about is how we can help them make that adjustment.
You're referring to obviously a robotic assistant. That seems like it would take a bit of getting your head around that, working alongside a robot.
Well, no, if you're familiar with using Siri, for example, or a couple of the other Alexa from the major players, then it's not unfamiliar to ask a question or can you call somebody or can you make this, find this information out? So we're accustomed to doing that. I think the way we need to view AI is as augmentation for most jobs. That is, the artificial intelligence supports and helps existing roles. It takes away the drudgery part of the information gathering, the calculations, the standard communication, and supports and assists in those decisions or the workflow.
As New Zealand businesses grapple with how to incorporate AI into their daily sort of business dealings, how important is it that the leaders of these organisations recognise the value of the human factor?
Absolutely critical. I mean, generally speaking, I would argue that the leaders of most organisations don't have a good grasp of the technology. So that's the first problem. And if they allow people further down the organisation to make decisions, they're likely to draw the wrong ones. But it's absolutely critical. If you want to have an engaged workforce that's going to use information technology to help increase productivity, if you don't bring them along, you're going to get the resistance that you would rightly deserve.
Give me an example of something the human brain can do that perhaps a bot can't.
Well, there are lots of those. There are lots of them. Leadership would be the first, the most important one. Creativity, they're not going to do an artwork or create a piece of poetry or so forth. It's impossible. Empathy is impossible for a machine to project, even though it might look synthetic. It's not true. And I mean, you could take as far as love. I mean, a machine's not going to fall in love with you, even though we might find robots in the future that look like they might, but that's not real. In those situations, wherever it requires some kind of creativity or that is a really complex decision, perhaps it is based on imperfect data, that would be one of the better examples.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.